In this video, we're going to continue talking about buffers and talk about buffer effectiveness here. And so we're going to start with a few terms. The first is buffer capacity, and that's the amount of acid or base that a buffer can neutralize. And the buffer range is the pH in which a buffer can actually work or be effective. And this effectiveness really depends on two things. One, the amount of buffer acid and base or acid and conjugate base that you have. We said last video that you're most effective when your acid and base concentrations are the same value. But we also said, there is a range. Your acid base concentration for a buffer only works if you're between 0.1 and 10 molar, where your ratio is between that. And something else that can affect the effectiveness is how much acid and base you have, which makes sense. The more acid and conjugate base you have, the better you are at resisting pH, or the more acid and base you can neutralize. So let's look at the buffer range. So we said that a buffer only works when the ratio between base and acid is between 0.1 and 10. Now here's the Henderson-Hasselbalch equation again. pH equals pKa plus log of base divided by acid. So let's actually put in these numbers and see what our pH range is. So let's say we have a ratio of 0.1 to 1, right? So the log of 0.1 is negative 1. So our pH at this range, our minimum range, is pH equals pKa minus 1. How about our maximum range, where we have 10 times as much base as we do acid? Well, that's pH equals pKa plus log of 10. The log of 10 is 1. So the highest pH we can have in our buffer still be useful is pH equals pKa plus 1. So for a buffer is only good between a pH of plus or minus 1, the pKa of your acid. So when you're working in a lab, you're working in solutions, and you're figuring out, okay, what buffer do I want to use? Well, that depends on what pH do I want to keep my solution at. Then you look up the pKa's of your possible buffers, and you pick the pKa that is closest to your desired pH. Now, buffer capacity. So we said your buffer has the highest capacity when your base to acid ratio is 1 or approaches 1. However, there are situations where you want to mainly be able to neutralize acids. For example, you're going to be adding acid for some reason, so you might actually make your buffer with more base than acid. Or you might be working with bases generally, so you will want to make your buffer with more acid than base. So this 1-to-1 ratio is more of a guideline. It really depends on what situation you find yourself in. Do you want more acid? Do you want more base? Or do you want equal ratios of acid and base? And that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next video.